Greetings and salutations to you all, ladies and gents. Kluger welcoming you to another video regarding Clarence the Bleeding Conjurer. This will be a build recap, I suppose, for lack of a better term. The original build guide for this, the build video for this, you know what I'm trying to say. The video for this build came out a couple of months ago at least now, and was not level 85. So obviously a lot has happened since then. Recently I just beat Ultimate Loghorian with this character, which I did a video on, which you should have seen by now on the channel. And I thought I would just talk about where things sort of ended up. The build, probably technically speaking, is still not 100% complete insofar as finding the exactly perfect best gear for the character. Certain slots probably do not have best in slot, and no, definitely don't have best in slot, but I mean, needless to say, I've been grinding with this build, both sort of throughout its progression and, you know, off camera. I've been chipping away, just doing random runs of high-level areas to see what I can find. Still haven't had great success in certain areas. I've been doing a lot of crafting as well with all the scrap and coins saved up. No such luck on that front either, so I'm sort of stuck with what I've got for right now. But let's have a quick recap, and we'll talk about where things are all at right now. So the skills, you guys will already be more or less across if you watch the original build guide. We're here on the occultist tree. Really hadn't evolved it much further to what it would have been originally. So 10 out of 10 Curse of Frailty and Vulnerability. Ended up with Blood of Drig at 14 out of 16, with Aspect of the Guardian at 2 out of 12. I could probably reduce that to 1 in retrospect. Maybe I'm using that mostly for the poison and acid resistance. I could take a point out of there and pop it in there. It's not really a massive deal. And 8 out of 12 in Doombolt, which has proved to be a pretty handy nuke for the build in certain places. As for Shaman, not much else has changed here either. I did end up, as you guys know, putting a point into Summon Briarthorn and Emboldening Roar, just as a bit of bait, I suppose, a bit of a distraction for enemies, which did prove to be helpful in certain instances, so that was cool. Maxed Devouring Swarm, maxed Grasping / Entangling Vines, maxed Storm Totem with Corrupted Storm, maxed Primal Bond, Mogdroggon's Pact at 5 out of 12, and Heart of the Wild, I think at 9 out of 10, and Oakskin at 5 out of 10 with plus skills on them. Not much changed since that original build guide, so there you go. Yeah, worked out really well. Devotion. Let's have a look at where that's ended up. I don't remember if I don't know if I would have had 50 devotion points at the time. Probably not. I've got 1 point in pink one, Chaos, 1 into Order, I always forget their names, and 1 into Ascendant. So we'll go out this way first, I suppose. I've got the Lion completely maxed. Dryad I've got complete as well to get the Dryad's Blessing skill, which has proven to be pretty handy. I've got it on Doombolt because I had no other skills to bind it to, but it's basically an insta-heal, which is really nice and handy. Also maxed out Tip the Scales, Scales of Ulkama with Tip the Scales, bound to Mogdroggon's Pact, so 20% chance on hit to trigger that, which has been really, really handy, especially the attack damage converted to health is a really nice savior if you're in a bit of a bind. Working downwards now, I've got maxed Crane for, I think it was mostly just to get more Order affinity to make our way to Dryad and Scales of Ulkama. Of course, you guys know maxed Falcon for Falcon Swoop, maxed MP Throne for its resistances, maxed Huntress, as you guys would know, for Rend and all the bleeding goodness that it does, maxed Manticore for the Acid Spray debuff. I'm just going through these a little bit quicker because the original build guide discusses this all in more depth. This is more of an update to that, just FYIs. Fox, we've got maxed. It's got some nice bleeding damage and stuff on it, but we needed the Eldritch, I believe, to get to Huntress, I think. And then as well, we've got Jackal with some points in it for the Chaos requirement for Huntress as well. And that is that. So there you go. Worked out pretty well in the end, I think. Gear we'll talk about now, which is pretty important at this point in time. Just briefly going over the stats. Physique, we ended up with 66 points in, Cunning 14, and Spirit 7. I think I would have just put points in Spirit to be able to wear certain bits of gear. Same with Cunning, but mostly the Physique for survivability was what it was all about. Our offensive ability ended up at 1809, which is not 100% ideal, of course, but we do have the Wild Blood set, which gives us the Wild Blood skill, which buffs our offensive ability pretty much all the time, which is really, really nice. Defensive ability ended up at 1799. It was much lower than that, but I used the Elite Solo Defender to get that a bit higher up. Again, not ideal. You'd probably want to shoot closer to 2k defensive ability if you can. This build didn't really work out that way because I was really quite geared on the offensive end, which is not necessarily the best way to go, but it's worked out okay as we killed Loghorrian. So there you go, stuff and things. So we'll go through the gear now one at a time, and I'll cover them in detail as opposed to last time in terms of their component and augment slots. I can't remember all the augments though. I won't remember them all by name, so just bear with me on that. So Wild Blood Crusher, as you guys know, our main hand weapon, with a Haunted Steel component on it for the attack damage converted to health and the vitality damage and stuff. That's the best I've been able to find that can actually slot into this kind of item. On the Guillotine, which is my other one, I had the Bloody Whetstone, which is increased bleeding damage and what have you, but this is a mace, and Bloody Whetstone can't go on maces, so that stinks. This ring I've got is pretty crap. Diamond's Signet of Readiness. I'm keeping it on because 10% to all damage plus the flat offensive and defensive ability values on it. I just haven't found something that compensates for that and gives me the other stuff that I want. I'd probably need a legendary ring, but I haven't come across any that have been good so far. Like I said, grinding and crafting has not worked out too well for me. I've got an Ectoplasm in that slot at the moment. I could probably swap that out too, but that's just for the energy regeneration. And you can see the augment stats there, but I don't remember where it comes from. As I said, Elite Solo Defender. I swapped over to that for the amount of defensive ability and armor value it's giving me. The Earth Ward skill's kind of nice, helps us not die as much. I've got a Sanctified Bone in that, and I've got Pierce and Fire Resistance on the augment there. Lapis Manticora on the necklace, bleeding damage and all sorts of good stuff on there. I really like the Manticore's Bite skill though, guys. 2-second skill recharge, 100% chance on critical attack, which we've been doing quite a lot. And it does a bunch of bleeding damage and petrifies targets, which is really, really, really cool. At the moment, I've got an Arcane Spark on there, Energy Leech, Offensive Ability, and Energy Regen. And there are the augment stats down below. Still using the Slith Primal Ring from Ultimate, of course. It's got quite nice resistances on it. 26% Elemental Resistance, 18% Vitality Resistance, and 31% Poison and Acid Resistance. Why wouldn't you use it? You know, it's really, really good. Again, haven't found anything better. The rings have had really poor luck, but look, that's a pretty good ring. I'm not embarrassed to be using that, even though it's just a quest ring. And I've got a Soul Shard on there. Again, possibly replaceable, but it's got Vitality, Damage, and Resistance on there. And yeah, and there are the augment stats. Wild Blood Mantle. As you guys know, the complete Wild Blood set is used in this build. Just good damage stuff, good resistances, and good plus skills for us. I've got a Silk Swatch on there for the resistances, and 10% Ether Resistance augment on it. Fiend Scale Jacket as the chest armor for the damage types that it gives us. No, the plus skills are useless, but it's got health on it as well, which is really cool. And the skill Contagion is quite interesting as well. 100% chance when hit to do vitality damage, life leech, and that's basically it, yeah. Chains of Oleron on this for the offensive ability and percent to all damage that it gives us. I could easily have Hallowed Ground on there instead, because I needed defensive ability, but I like how much damage I was doing with that, so yeah, take that or leave it. If you're feeling really squishy with this build, put a Hallowed Ground instead, but I was having fun with Chains of Oleron on there. For the gloves, Touch of the Ever-Living Grove. Not the most armorful item ever, but it's got plus skills to Heart of the Wild and Oak Skin, elemental resistances, health regen. It's quite nice. And the skill Healing Winds has proven to be pretty handy. 6-second skill recharge with a 10% chance on attack to heal the bejesus out of us, so I'm not complaining. Just an Unholy Inscription on that for the vitality damage and offensive ability, and it's got nice resistances as well. The boots, another slot I haven't had the best luck with. I've got Desecrated Treads right now. They're decent. Yeah, percent to all damage, percent to vitality damage, and offensive ability. Movement speed, they're not poor, they're not terrible. They're just not exactly what I'd be looking for in this slot, but c'est la vie, that's how it goes. They're not bad, they're just not great. Mark of Mogdrogon on these for the health, health regen, and movement speed, all of which are very handy in this instance. The metal, not bad, but not great. Star of Butchery, which gives us bleeding damage, percent to all damage, and health and cunning. Not particularly an interesting item, but it's getting the job done. I've got a black tallow on there, primarily for the chaos resistance. Wild Blood Girdle, of course, rounding out the Wild Blood set. Again, just good damage types, good plus skills for us. Defensive ability, resistances, just it hits a lot of, it ticks a lot of boxes rather. I have got an anti-venom salve on there for primarily the poison and acid resistance, and that is that. We'll do the pants next, the bone weave leggings. I like the sigil of consumption from these pants. It's pretty handy that was triggering and doing some good attack damage converted to health. It's got vitality damage on it, which is our sort of secondary damage type, which isn't terrible. So I've been using that. It's also got 17% chaos resistance on it and 31% vitality resistance on it, plus health regeneration. So it's quite a nice set of pants in terms of survivability. And on that I've got another anti-venom salve because I was sorely lacking in the poison and acid resistance department. Last but not least, the relic I need a drink. I've been running around with Torment. So the stats on it are not great for us. Again, it's a vitality damage thing, which is not ideal. But it's got the Torment skill on it, which is a 25% chance when hit to do vitality damage, 1.2k vitality damage, and do minus 30% total speed and minus 15% physical resistance on enemies. That's not so pertinent, but the minus 30% total speed is really handy. When you consider Grasping Vines as well, and Curse of Frailty, both of which, Curse of Frailty does slow, doesn't it? Yeah. So when you roll all those together, Grasping Vines, Curse of Frailty, plus, oh my god, where am I going? Plus the Torment's minus total speed, enemies are really, really slow and shouldn't be able to get to you all that often. So that has been a real helpful thing. Also, I just haven't found a relic that works better than this for this build. You know, there's some that like offer bleeding damage and those sorts of things, but they're more for like a traditional like melee style bleeding damage build, where this is like a caster bleeding damage build. So there's nothing better that I've found so far. But let me know otherwise if you guys have seen better ones for this purpose. Not much else to mention, I don't think. Oh, we can briefly go through the stats in terms of where our damage percentages ended up. That would be a cool thing. So the bleeding damage ended up at 869% with a duration of 139% and 233 flat bleeding damage, although it's not particularly pertinent for us because we were mostly using spells to deal our bleeding damage. That's pretty nice. And again, well, what am I doing? I was in the right place. The Wild Blood set, once again, when Wild Blood triggers, gives us a plus 400 bleeding damage. I can't even talk. Plus 400% bleeding damage with 50% increased duration. So that takes us up to like 1.2k% bleeding damage, which is pretty insane. Our secondary modifier damage type is Vitality. I got that up to 632%, and we're dealing up to 2.2k of it. Not that we're hitting enemies with our weapon all that much, but I mean, when we take a look at Storm Totem, it was dealing up to 2.2k vitality damage, which is pretty nice. So that's a handy buff to have. That is really about it, isn't it, everybody? I mean, total deaths in the end was 6, which isn't, you know, I'd prefer 0, but that's pretty good, I feel. The greatest damage dealt ended up being 63k. Holy smokes, that's pretty impressive. And we've killed nearly 90,000 monsters. So, there you freaking go. I think that covers everything we need to talk about. You can see the resistances there. I mean, the only one really lacking is Stun. Ether and Chaos aren't great, but overall it's still in a pretty good space. Armor rating ended up at 959. So, yay, there you go, ladies and gents. Little summary update thing of where the build ended up. Now that we've beaten most of what I need to beat with this character, I don't know how often I'll revisit it, because I want to do other builds for you guys, but there you have it. Any comments or suggestions, leave them down below in the comments, otherwise just drop a like, and I hope to see you again really, really soon. My name is Kluger. You have a fantastic day.